Today we're talking about the Draco Malfoy phenomenon and media's history of romanticizing the bad boy. This video will cover the fandom's bizarre glamorization of Draco Malfoy's character, debunking the bad boy, I can fix him and bully to lover trope, as well as giving my own thoughts on Draco Malfoy's character and if he deserved a redemption or not. This isn't just a video about Draco Malfoy. He's a symbol of a much wider commentary I'm making about fangirls' obsession with these misunderstood bully figures and trying to make them into something they're not. I still believe that Draco Malfoy deserved some kind of redemption, and he's definitely more morally grey than bad. But the fandom's basic worship of him is a little bizarre to me, and it's like people have been consuming so much fan fiction they forgot what his character and the original source material was actually like. I'm not in any way trying to say that I like J.K. Rowling or support the things she said. While I still enjoy Harry Potter, I do not in any way like the things that J.K. Rowling has said or her anti-trans narrative that she's been spreading. Luckily, because Harry Potter has had such an enormous influence, it's literally even outside of J.K. Rowling herself now, and it belongs to us, the fans, and I like to think that we can reclaim it as our own without letting her behaviour ruin what was such a big part of so many of our childhoods, or that even shaped us as people, like Daniel Radcliffe said. I know Modern Girls made a video about this because there's a Harry Potter reboot coming, and I want to emphasize that I will not be paying to watch this reboot because I don't want to support something that J.K. Rowling is the executive producer of. That being said, what exactly is a bad boy? In my mind, there are two versions of this bad boy figure: the well-written fictional version and the trashy, toxic fictional version. First, I'm going to discuss the bad, messy type that we're used to seeing, especially in young adult fiction nowadays. The bad boy is spunky. He takes it a little bit too far, to the point that his actions are actively hurting others. But because he has a tragic backstory, that's often used to justify or rationalize his bad behavior. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'm a sucker for the bad boy trope. What can I say? That's why I like Draco Malfoy, because he's just so mysterious and brooding and charismatic. To which I have to say, Draco Malfoy is not a bad boy. He's been mislabeled. For the sake of this video, I'm calling it that because I know that's how many people believe he is, but he's not. The original bad boy was someone I could actually get behind. Someone like Mr. Darcy, who's misunderstood, yes, a little bit arrogant, but often more due to circumstantial stuff than actually being an awful person. And when he realizes the error of his ways, he tries really hard to remedy it and is basically begging for the main character's forgiveness. Compared to a lot of the bad boys we see now, who are either stalkers or abusers or just really straight up nasty guys. I will show you guys my books. I've had these since I was like 7, and I've reread the Harry Potter series a cajillion times. Then they did The Cursed Child. Let's just pretend this book never happened, this script, because what the hell was that? Like time travel? Are you kidding me? Never once reading those books did I think to myself, wow, Draco Malfoy is such an icon, like he's such a bad boy. Before I explain why, I want to give a big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes. There's something for everyone, like creative writing, self-development, entrepreneurship, earning money online, whatever takes your fancy. I've been doing a great class called Productivity Today, Finding Your Flow for Maximal Productivity by Kevin Siska. He talks about how to increase your work output by knowing how you work best and getting into a state of flow, which I found so helpful with managing this YouTube channel and all my other projects, and it's really inspired me to do more classes on Skillshare, and I can't wait to try more out. So, want to unlock your creativity and learn something new? The first 1,000 people to use my link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so check it out. Sandy and Danny from Greece are a classic example of the good girl, bad boy dynamic. Sandy's a romantic at heart while Danny's a gangster, and he basically humiliates her multiple times and rejects her, and she ultimately changes herself to get him to be interested in her while he faces no need for self-awareness. Another example of a bad boy is Hardin from After, or Massimo from 365 Days, all of which I would classify as the more toxic part of this trope. I have no idea how it got so misconstrued where people thought genuinely that Draco Malfoy is a bad boy. The whole point of a bad boy is being a risk taker, a badass, and you can't help but love him because he's so damn charismatic. Draco Malfoy is none of those things. He is only focused on self-preservation until the last page, and he's ultimately a coward and a bully. The kind of person that bullies others and picks on people like Neville Longbottom, that's not someone with confidence. That's someone that needs to bring other people down in order to feel better about themselves. He's actually a teacher's pet and a real suck-up. He's not a rebel in the slightest. If you want a bad boy in Harry Potter, look at what Sirius Black was like as a teenager. Now that I can get behind. He was reckless but had a slightly dangerous air to him. But Draco Malfoy, it's bizarre how much the obsession ignited at the time, where there was all this fan fiction and people saying they were in love with him when he wasn't even that big a part of the books. And in the movies, he only has like, what, 30 minutes of screen time? Not much at all. Even Harry, you could argue, is more of a bad boy than Draco, because Harry has, when you think about it, the tragic backstory and the mysterious past, and sometimes he'll randomly turn up at school covered in blood and you have no idea how it happened. He's always in detention, and he's the one that has basically broken every Hogwarts rule ever in existence. He's always sneaking around at night. The only reason why we don't think of Harry necessarily as a bad boy is because we see things from his point of view. So he doesn't seem particularly mysterious to us, but imagine how intriguing he seems to people that don't know him. There's a reason why so many girls were like obsessed with him. When people are into the darker bad boys, the actually nasty ones who don't have good intentions, I think the actual fantasy wish fulfillment part of that is that the guy kind of makes you nervous and he has this dangerous quality to him where you wonder if you could change him. So it almost boosts your own ego and your self-validation, because you think, oh, if I could get him to like me and notice me and tame him, it means something good about me, like I've achieved something no one else could achieve. A very early example of this, if we go back in history, is Beauty and the Beast. The Beast is an awful person, and I don't know why it was so romanticized that he'd end up with Belle, because when you think about it, he kidnaps her against her will for something so silly and insignificant. He has serious anger management issues in both the fairy tale and the Disney movie, and yet we're meant to believe that Belle's love changes him, therefore putting all the responsibility on the woman's shoulders to carry what should be the man's burden. The bad boy is written much better when he has a heart of gold and he does change, but to his own merit and not for the love of a woman. Like, he can't just do it because the woman says you're toxic. It's much better when he does it of his own accord. But very, very often the writers take it too far, because there's a fine line between sexy and breaking the rules and then just being an asshole. And often that line is very easily crossed to the point where the bad boy is actually just a jerk. He's a bully, he's mean, he's unkind, and he doesn't have the emotional bandwidth or the communication skills for a relationship. Even if it's someone like Jess Mariano from Gilmore Girls, who needed therapy as opposed to being with Rory. Sometimes the more extreme examples, like Hardin from After, they're actually violent and nasty, and it's played off as like this sexy romantic thing because he wears a leather jacket. But most people really lap this up and they romanticize the bad boy because of the I can fix him mentality. Think of Maddie and Nate from Euphoria as the best example. Maddie thinks for a long time that her love can fix Nate, and she also believes that because their relationship is dramatic and controlling, that means it's passionate, and it's very easy to get the two confused. But no, his behavior is actually abusive. But you know what's crazy, by the way, is I made a bunch of TikToks like a few days ago and last week about The Summer I Turned Pretty and how it romanticizes toxic or just unhealthy relationships, because every relationship in that show is basically fucked aside from a few, and Belly's relationship with Jeremiah and Conrad is unhealthy at points with both of them, but especially with Conrad. It's better with Jeremiah in season 2, he matures a bit. But my point is that sometimes you need to work on yourself as opposed to being in a relationship like in Conrad's situation. And on my viral TikTok I made about that, there were so many people in the comments saying, but love isn't easy. And the fact that it's so difficult for Conrad and Belly means they're meant to be together. And it shocked me how many people were saying that and genuinely believe that, because love should be easy and can be. In fact, I would argue that if something's seeming really difficult in the beginning, that's because it's not meant to be, or at least not right now. But ever since I was young, I've heard this phrase, if a guy bullies you, it means he likes you. What? And we're meant to be excited about it. So this boy's picking on you, but you're meant to be happy about it? How about we teach girls that we shouldn't be looking for validation and affection from someone that makes us feel like shit about ourselves? That's why I could never get behind bully romance, because who wants to read a romance about a victim that falls in love with their bully or ex-bully? Therefore, it's romanticizing abusive behavior. That's why it would have been so ridiculous if Draco and Hermione ended up together like in these fan fictions, because people are genuinely like convincing themselves that underneath Draco Malfoy's sneering, pretentious, snooty attitude, there's this big softy. Like, no, his actions speak for themselves, don't they? So why is it that there is this very large community of Draco Malfoy fans, or fans of Hardin from After, or fans of Damon from The Vampire Diaries? Let me introduce you to pretty privilege. From a young age, we have been taught to strive for beauty. We see it on Instagram, in the toxic wellness culture all around us, the emphasis on capitalist products, and buy this to make yourself look good and then your problems will be fixed, and almond mum culture, all of that. There is something called the halo effect, a cognitive bias that occurs when we assume that someone attractive therefore has a good personality and other perceived positive traits. And if someone is ugly, it's so much easier for us to be critical of them. And it's even proven, like in the legal system, that attractive people get less harsh punishments. A prime example is the stalker and serial killer Joe from You. And when you went on social media, the disturbing thing wasn't that the show was portraying a serial killer, because it was meant to be a deconstruction of a lot of romance tropes we see, and men who were actually creepy but romanticized. The show did a great job of that. The disturbing thing was the audience reaction and how so many people completely misunderstood it and thought they were genuinely meant to be like in love with Joe and thought he was a great guy, and were even defending his actions. And there was almost more criticism aimed at his love interest Beck, who he later murders because she's annoying, as opposed to criticizing him for being a downright creep and a stalker. And I've made videos about this show. I'll link it in the description if you are interested. But it's so troubling that people are willing to overlook his bad behavior due to them finding him attractive. Consider the actor's former co-star Ed Westwick, for example. There were rape allegations against that man, but so many people were willing to overlook it because they were saying he's so attractive, there's no way he would hurt women because he could get any woman he wanted, so why would he need to resort to violence, which is a very flawed argument. Think of the new Netflix show Dharma, where they cast Evan Peters, and he's a lot more attractive than Dharma was, but the issue with that is then everyone's focusing on talking about how hot Evan is rather than focusing on the actual crimes committed and the victims. Or the Ted Bundy movie, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, where they cast famous sex symbol Zac Efron. How did they think it was going to go down? Everyone talking about how attractive Zac Efron is rather than actually focusing on what was happening, like the story. That's even worse than the Joe thing, because at least with Joe from You, it's a fictional character, but by sexualizing, let's say, Ted Bundy or real life serial killers, these are real people we're talking about here who've actually hurt people. But I guess the moral of the story is that pretty people can get away with basically anything. This gets me into the ship wars at the time with Harry Potter. Many people thought that Draco should have been paired with Hermione or with Harry, and that it would have been part of his redemption, was like falling in love with them. And especially in terms of Hermione, that had so much fan fiction written about it, which I just find really gross personally. I don't really get it, because he bullied her for years and wished death upon her, laughed at the thought of her being assaulted, and was just all round really mocking and called her slurs, and he was horrible.
No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood.
His behaviour towards her wasn't the result of some pent-up sexual frustration or sexual tension, it was just bullying. Another reason people loved them together was because of Tom Felton and Emma Watson's real-life connection. She had a crush on him as a kid when she was like 9 and followed him around a lot like a puppy. He was like her first crush. But even now they're older, they love each other in a like platonic way, but Tom Felton said that there was chemistry between them, but neither of them acted on it. And they do still really care about each other. He said they're like kindred souls, but there certainly were like at different times moments where they were both like interested in the other. He said there were a lot of rumors that there was more to their relationship than they were letting on, and his girlfriend at the time even knew something was up. And he'd sort of said, I love Emma like a sister, but there was more to it than that. His conclusion was that they're still very close and he really admires her and loves her as a person. Now, could I ship Tom Felton and Emma Watson? Sure, I could get behind that more. Hermione and Draco? Not a chance. A big issue though was the fan fiction influencing people's perceptions of Draco so much that they forgot what he was like in the movies and in the books. And so there was this weird dissonance between their idea of him and how Harry, Ron and Hermione perceive him, and how J.K. Rowling perceived him and wrote him, which was like completely different. I remember, I think it was Cassandra Clare, who's like a famous author. She wrote lots of fan fiction about Draco Malfoy and people read it and lapped it up. And that was at the same time the books were coming out, I think, so they were still being influenced by the fan fiction at the time. Now, I'm not sitting here saying you can't write fan fiction, you can't read fan fiction, it's awful. I'm not here to take it that seriously. I'm aware it's just fan fiction, and the whole point of that is to reimagine characters and play around, explore your creativity. Who am I to rain on your parade? Knock yourself out, honestly. And if anything, the actual couples in the show were very lazily written, so why not go for it? The only thing I don't understand is when people genuinely are convinced that Hermione and Draco were endgame. Like, okay. In terms of Harry and Draco, a lot of people thought Harry and Draco could work as a couple. This I understand more, but I still don't really get it, simply because their relationship is so deeply unhealthy, and I don't like relationships that start from literal bullying. And also it was so rooted in jealousy of Draco being bitter that Harry turned down a friendship with him, and he kind of held that against Harry ever since. Apparently there's a very thin line between love and hate, so a lot of people mistook their arguments as banter or flirting. Especially in the movies, a lot of their interactions come across as more playful than genuinely like they want to kill each other. This though, I have to say, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I kind of get it, because Draco is so obsessed with Harry throughout the books. All he talks about is Harry. Then, in the 6th book, Harry thinks that Draco Malfoy might become a Death Eater, and he literally thinks to himself he'd forgotten all about Quidditch. He was not interested because he was becoming obsessed with Draco Malfoy. J.K. Rowling says that word for word. And I think the word obsession is interesting because he was literally following Draco around, just watching him on the Marauders map 24/7. It was kind of weird, and you could definitely read that as some kind of romantic infatuation, especially because Ron and Hermione were starting to become annoyed with him and saying, Harry, for goodness sake, can we stop talking about Draco? Who cares what he's doing? Additionally, it's not like Harry's other love interests were great. Cho Chang was really poorly written and deserved better, and Ginny just sort of appeared out of nowhere, and it felt very forced and random, especially because she looks a bit like Harry's mother and has the same hair color. A lot of people found it creepy because she looked like Lily Potter. Actually, side note, I am dressed as Lily Potter today. I hope you like it. Actually, I love the whole Harry Potter setup today. I feel like it's very on brand. On top of that, Harry and Draco were never particularly violent towards each other. Like maybe one time Draco fired a spell at him, but the rest of the time it wasn't really that physical. Did Draco Malfoy deserve a redemption? And do bad boys in general deserve more credit? Along with Draco Malfoy, there has been a reclaiming of Slytherins by fans in the past few years due to them being unfairly villainized and shit on for literally no reason, including the facts that apparently being cunning and ambitious are meant to be bad things. In many ways, Draco is still a loser by the end of the series, and I think it would have been unrealistic if he suddenly turned into a beautiful, caring person doing charity work and spreading love and goodness wherever he went. However, I do think, considering the trajectory his character was taking, it would have made sense for him to have a bigger arc than what we got. Again, I don't know why people became so obsessed with Draco, because he's really not that significant a character. Like in the first 5 books, he's really not that big a deal. It's only until the 6th book that J.K. Rowling really makes him a sympathetic, well fleshed out character. I never thought Draco was evil. I mean, I found him extremely annoying and a bit of a twat, but I did understand that he was very much influenced by his home life and stuff he was hearing, and he was just regurgitating everything he was taught, and it would have been hard because his entire belief systems have been purebloods are good, Muggleborns are bad, Voldemort's great. He's just being fed this information by his parents, who of course he loves and trusts, and it doesn't feel safe to question their decisions. So that's what makes him sympathetic, is because he couldn't help what family he was born into. It's not his fault his father's an asshole. He was raised so spoilt, taught he was the best at everything, and that was actually a form of cruelty in itself, because he never learned resilience. He never learned hard work. He was still an awful person though. Think of the whole Buckbeak situation and how he messed around in class and tried to get Hagrid fired, and then how he made fun of Neville's parents and patients at St. Mungo's. Of course, anyone can be redeemed. Think of Harry's dad, James Potter. He was a proper bully in the books, and he grew up and turned into a nice guy, and at the end of the day, Draco was just a kid, and there are plenty of people that were bullies when they were younger and then grow up and really regret their behaviour. However, it does piss me off a bit when people say he's the boy who had no choice, because there's always a choice. And this is, again, this isn't just about Draco Malfoy. This is a thing I see so often with characters like Noah from The Kissing Booth, Hardin from After, any of these romantic figures where people are like, oh, they didn't have a choice, like it's because they're sad because their mum died when they're young and they have nightmares and it's not their fault. No, there is always a choice, even if it's a hard one, and at some point you need to start taking responsibility for your actions and how it impacts other people. Malfoy didn't need to kill Dumbledore. Snape, an adult, was offering him help, which Malfoy continually declined because he wanted the glory. Because of him trying to kill Dumbledore, he was also endangering other students in the school and Rosmerta. And then when you think Malfoy's starting to get better because he doesn't identify Harry to Voldemort, he then tries to capture Harry in the room of requirement. And it's not a redemption arc, even though he gets a bit better, because a redemption arc, again, it's been mislabeled. Like, I don't get that. It's not a redemption arc. Redemption means going from actively doing bad things to actively doing good things. Draco Malfoy doesn't do that. He's just sort of at a standstill by the end, where he's fluffing around, useless, weak and pathetic, along with his parents. It's just that he's trying to survive, and his only heroism lies in his inaction. What we get instead is a disillusionment arc. This is when a character's been taught that the world is a certain way, and then everything comes crashing down around them when they realize it's not true and their belief systems are dismantled, which is what happens to Draco Malfoy. He is so clear that it's okay to call Hermione bad names, and it's okay for him to say that Ron's mum is fat and that Death Eaters are great and that you know, everything his father says is amazing because he trusts his parents, and, you know, if Dumbledore's bad, then he should go along with that. And then as the book unfolds and the next book unfolds, his father ends up in prison and everyone seems scared of Voldemort. And then he's trying to help his father because he thinks his parents are so amazing. And then he signs up to be a Death Eater and realizes his father was wrong, that it's shit. Voldemort treats his followers terribly, and it's not this amazing thing he'd hyped up in his head. It's actually awful. And his mind is literally blown. Then he thinks Harry is the worst, but then realizes Harry isn't so bad after all and probably doesn't deserve to die. He experiences this real disconnect between what he thought being part of Voldemort's team would look like and what it was actually like on the inside. Then he grows up a bit and realizes that his parents don't know what they're doing either, and they were wrong to trust Voldemort. But that doesn't mean he's a hero. In fact, he's always been very weak. He doesn't engage in physical violence because he's scared to. And people were saying he's such a good person because he didn't kill Dumbledore. He would have been happy to kill Dumbledore through poison or through a curse. It's just that he didn't want to directly kill him face to face because, again, he's a coward. That's why he always has his bodyguards, Crabbe and Goyle, with him, because on his own he's nothing. A lot of the awful stuff he did was left out of the movies, which is why I think a lot of people prefer him in the movies, because you just forget about all that stuff. It's not like they have time in the movies to put in every single awful thing he did, which is why overall the movies paint a better picture of him than the books do. The movies can definitely give you a stronger case for the fact that he was the boy who had no choice and was bullied at home because of a scene at Borgin and Burke's when he's younger, where he speaks out of turn and his father sort of whacks him with his cane and Draco looks scared. I don't know why they added that in. That was kind of stupid of them because that was never in the books. In fact, in the books, his parents seem to treat him very well and certainly don't snap at him or shove him around. The movies leave a lot more room for Draco to be redeemed. For example, there's a deleted scene where he throws Harry his wand to try and help him out. And although he was emotional in the books about killing Dumbledore and scared, the movies really hype it up and showcase it and make him a much more sympathetic character because of how real it is. You can see the fear on Draco's face. You can see how gaunt and terrified he looks, the bags under his eyes. Tom Felton acts it really well. You see him panicking and walking out of the Great Hall kind of tugging at his shirt collar, and it's very hard to not feel bad for him. I believe that a big part of why people like Draco at all in the movies is a testament to how much Tom Felton brung him to life. And also, Tom brings a much more charming, confident air to Malfoy than I had imagined him having in the books. Factor in Tom's attractiveness, and you've basically got the ideal bad boy in people's minds. And he seems a lot more vulnerable, especially in the 6th movie, so it makes sense to me that people would be like, oh, he's kind of cute. And it's not like Draco doesn't have good in him, he does. His first wand had unicorn hair in it, and since the wand chooses the owner, it proves that Draco is at least somewhat pure at heart. In the finale of the books, Draco isn't actively seeking out Harry. It's more like they've come to a truce or a checkmate where he's just neutral towards him, which I think was the best that J.K. Rowling thought she could do without making it unrealistic. The only issue is she's quite stubborn, so when she makes a decision like Ron and Hermione need to be together, or Draco's like this, Slytherin house is like this, she struggles to change her mind. So even though Draco Malfoy was moving towards redemption, maybe she wasn't expecting it to happen, and so she kind of dug her heels in rather than taking it further, because as a result it feels kind of unfinished at the end with his character and a little bit unsatisfying, because I think there was room and space for it to be taken further and it wasn't. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you think about bad boys in general. Are there bad boys in media that you think were done well, ones you thought were done badly? I'm very curious to know. The link to my Patreon is in the description. For as little as $2 a month, you can see extra exclusive content from me, and make sure to check out Skillshare as well. So thank you for watching, guys, and I will see you for the next video. Mwah.